Hello, everybody. Welcome to Close to the Corn podcast, an original life series in which we'll be exploring our place in this world. Today, we'll be talking about Shadrack, Meshach, and Abednego and the trials and tribulations they went through in Daniel chapter 3. Cooper, as I recall, you had a similar situation to these three guys in your life here recently. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, recently it felt right for me to make the step in my walk as a Christian to, not be shy about my faith any longer. For a long time I sort of just let it rest on my side, almost like Travis said this morning, resting my faith on my side, just having our relationship be something I can, say I have, but not really talk about it. And so recently I've been able to, have a few moments where I could speak about things, put together messages for my youth, and I'm just very grateful for the fact I could do that. And it just, it was very scary for a long time, the thought of, being public about my faith almost, being able to just walk up to any person on the street and be like, whoa, this is my faith, this is what is the truth, this is a belief, that I hold, and it's just sort of a scary thing to think about for a while was, what are they going to think of that? What are they going to say to that? But at a certain point, your relationship with God comes first before anyone else would ever have to say or think. So,
Eli, Cooper, Wesley, Travis, anything else?
Well, I think it's going to be pretty important to let our viewers, our listeners know that may not be real familiar with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, kind of what happened with them. And so, Cooper's talking about making his faith public. Well, in Daniel chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar decided that the entirety of the nation of Israel should worship him because they were in captivity to him. And so he's, when all the music plays, you'll bow down and worship my golden image. And of course, these old boys said, yeah, I don't think so. And so they were very public about their faith. They didn't hide in the corner to say, hey, everybody else is going to bow down, so we're going to go hide when they've done that. They were so public about it that they were actually found out to not be worshiping the golden image of Nebuchadnezzar, and so they were arrested for it. So, any of you guys kind of faced any persecution, kind of like what these guys? I know we're not facing jail time. We're not facing a fiery furnace like these guys were thrown into. A furnace that was heated up 7 times harder than he had ever been. It should have melted faces off. But they were thrown into the fire. We'll get to the rest of the story in a minute. But they were thrown into the fire. Have you guys, not literally thrown into the fire, but faced some sort of persecution over your faith?
Not thrown into the fire, but there's been people that have frowned upon it, like at school, we have first priority groups and stuff, and when I was in first priority, when I was in school, I would be one of the greeters, and I'd be like, hey, you guys want to come? There's free donuts. Mm-hmm. And that would sometimes get people to come just for the free donuts. But they wouldn't stick around for it, and they'd just be like, I'm not interested. I just want the donuts, and they'd just get out of there. But that's a start.
Yeah, but there was probably plenty of them that, I get to speak at First Priority a lot, and so I will see these guys doing exactly what you're talking about, greeting, and the people in school, your classmates at school, you guys that are still in high school, I've seen them actually get to the other side of the hallway away from the greeters because they don't want to even be invited to First Priority. And it's not necessarily like a persecution, but it's just a denouncing that, hey, I don't want to be a part of that, so I don't even want to engage in a conversation. So, yeah, it's I've seen that happen, and I've also seen them come in, get the donuts, and be out the door before the door closes. But what about you guys? Any kind of persecution inside your family, friends?
I've lost a couple, not lost, but I've kind of cut contact with some family members just because I tried to get them to come to church and they didn't want to.
How tough was it? It's not. I want the viewers and listeners to understand. You're not cutting them off,
no.
But it's more they
They
have cut you
yeah,
off.
just quit talking to me.
Yeah, because I've had the same situation happen in my life with my younger brother, that I think he call blocks me on purpose whenever he sees, he'll answer text because there's not actual conversation involved in a lot of those, yeah. So he can answer at his own leisure, and I know he's busy. I don't want to give him too bad a hard time. I know with his job he's really busy, but broaching the conversation of faith is really, really hard with him. And so, yeah, it's kind of tough, but I don't know. I can see where you're coming from on that one, and we as Christians we're not supposed to cut contact with these people. So I wanted to make sure that people understood that, but inevitably it is going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what about you two, Micah, Cooper? Have y'all had any face the persecute? You talk about not really, it took you a minute to get public about your faith out of fear. Was that maybe part of the fear that you had?
It sort of was, yeah. I've got a few friends I know that aren't the closest with their relationship. And it's hard to see because, I mean, I don't dislike anyone at all, you know. But it's really hard to see when a friend is so, like, distant and not welcomed. Yeah. Sort of just, like, not open to the idea of even trying it. You know, it's really disheartening because I've got one friend I've been wanting to, like, get in church for a long time who hasn't made any budges, you know. And so it's just very upsetting to see. Because I know the sort of lifestyle they live isn't necessarily the best. And so it's hard to see. It's hard to see.
Yeah, I can echo Cooper's sentiment on that. I know which friend he's talking about. Me, and he's been a part of me and Cooper's friend group for, well, he was part of my friend group before he even met Cooper, I believe. We went to the same elementary school. Cooper went to a different elementary school, but yeah, he was just raised in a secular household, and like he's never really been interested, in just raised in a not very Christian way, and just like kind of not
He's
been.
not used to it.
He's not used to it, and it's foreign to him. And like most things, like when something's foreign to us, we reject it. Like same thing when there's like that's why the reason you get infections. Like something gets in your skin, your body rejects it, hence the infection.
Right, absolutely. And so when we start talking about this is somebody that you guys know.
Mm-hmm.
He's close to you, right? Makes it pretty difficult, when you start having those conversations about, hey, Jesus loves you because you love them so much that you don't want to lose that friendship, but you also love them so much you don't want to see, we believe that there's an eternity in either heaven or hell, and so you don't want to see somebody die lost, and so it breaks your heart, right? But what if we flip the script a little bit here now and see, when we start talking about Shadrack, Meshach, and Abednego, I love this story because how many of y'all have tiptoed around the subject of Christianity around your friends?
Definitely, yeah.
I've done it too.
Like
it's kind of second nature, isn't it? Because fear kind of has a way of freezing us a little bit. But when I go back to Daniel 3 in verse number 16, and I love this passage. It said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we don't have any need to answer you. I'm reading out the ESV in this matter. If you read the KJV version, it says we're not careful in answering you in this matter. It says, if it be so, our God we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. I was thinking about this for a minute. He's like, I'm going to throw you in a furnace that will melt you down before you hit the bottom. And they were like, yeah, we don't even have to give this the time of day because we're going to stand for our faith. They're not careful. Like, they're not even tiptoeing around the subject. Straight into it. To the king.
Mm-hmm.
Like, highest dude in the land. They're like, hey, but not even worth our time. to even talk about this subject with you because God, you know.
And you got to take a moment and establish their background. Nebuchadnezzar came in with his troops and destroyed the city of Jerusalem. It took these three kids. They were kids.
Yes.
And
like your age, teenagers.
Yes, took them to Babylon, had the guts and the gall. Their parents had raised them so well, and they were so deeply rooted in their faith, to say to the king, who literally has the power to kill them, just threatened to throw them, and is about to throw them into a furnace that has melted steel and metal better than anything else. And they basically laugh in his face, saying, "We're not afraid of that. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Bring it on, Skater." It's you know, and it's great. You bring up such a point. They were raised that way.
Mm-hmm.
They were raised that way. We can go back to your friend, and you know, it could be a good thing and a bad thing. But sometimes we get so deep rooted in things that we have been taught and told and taught and told, and they're wrong. And we can get stuck in those. But on the things that comes to the Bible, we don't stand as firm on. And it's literally the truth of the Word of God. And he's like, hey, you're going to bow down. You're going to worship me. You're going to, in modern day terms, he's saying you're going to worship the world and denounce God. And you're going to have to bow down to the world and walk away from God. And that's how this land operates. Time to get close to the corn. Isn't that how our land operates today?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, we were talking about before coming on air here about a certain a rally where it is proclaimed that Jesus is Lord, and they're told, you're at the wrong place. You might want to go to the smaller one down the road. And it's like, seriously, that's the world that we live in now? Like, we're living in an area, in a world now that is wanting to ostracize and criticize and put down Christians. And no, we're not facing death here in America for it, but there are places in this world that are for your faith. And so I think about that as like,
wow.
These guys that did that, this was their Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego moment.
And I think this is kind of what our nation's come to. We were founded as a Christian nation, like just 250 years ago. How far away have we strayed from God? If you look, like even in the Old Testament, every time the Israelites strayed away from God, something bad happened. Like whether it's like, if you want a famous example, like getting kidnapped by the Egyptians, literally what we're talking about here, they strayed away from God.
Yes.
That's why Nebuchadnezzar came in. Like he was led on by the hand of God to take over Jerusalem, which is what prompted the story of Daniel, Shadrach, and Meshach, and Abednego. Like this is the entire reason.
Absolutely. And we've discussed this before on having headlines matching in newspapers where it says, natural disaster hits, and on the very same newspaper you see funding to Iran, or you see peace talks with Israel to take land from Israel to give to blah blah blah, and when you see people going up against Israel, I think you see the hand of God in judgment and natural disasters. He's the one that controls these things. And so, that's on the broad spectrum, just in the world that we live in. Let's get real close to the core. How is that going on in your all's lives right now? Like, when you start thinking about standing in the face of adversity on your faith, for your faith, how's that going for you guys?
I mean, I'll just say, it's a very hard thing to do. And, like, kids our age, like, way back then, were just like, yeah, that's who I am. I feel like most kids now, in this time, they're like, they'll say, like, no, I'm not, just to be able to fit in with that group. because they don't want to be frowned upon.
Either that
I would
or-
agree with that.
Either that or they'll do like habitual Christianity, like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, then turn around and like go to like 6 parties in a weekend or
Do
something.
whatever.
Yeah, do literally anything they want to.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it was a choice that they made. It was like, it wasn't the religion that they were following. It was the relationship that they had with God that they were following. And we find that to be so true, in fact, that they stood up so much for their faith that when they answered Nebuchadnezzar and they said, hey, listen, this is not even worth the subject. Those in there, we don't care. We're good. God's got us. And even if we die, we're fine. And so when he throws them in there, I think it's really cool that we see in the midst of the worst adversity that they could have ever faced, they were thrown in because of the king's order. And then the king in verse 24, the king Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste to declare his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? And they said, said to the king, true, O king. And he answered and said, but I see 4 men unbound walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the appearance of the force is like unto the Son of God. Jesus was there.
Yeah.
How powerful is it that a pagan king recognizes the Son of God? Like, I think that's one of the coolest things in this entire story. Like, Nebuchadnezzar is, like, if you know anything about like history in Babylon, extremely pagan nation. Like,
Yes.
like they were all sorts of stuff. Like, but here
He acknowledges the deity of Christ
yes,
in this moment. And it's not even that, like, it's like, he got the point quick.
you can
Like the
almost,
Bible says,
like,
he rose up in haste. Like, that means he got up. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so,
yeah, like, if you have an interactive imagination like me, you can almost just see him, like, just like kind of like stand up and like kind of look around and like wide-eyed shocked. Like you can tell in the story he's genuinely surprised. Like he has no idea what's going on.
absolutely.
I think he's a little scared.
A little.
He's a little scared.
This person, he's
I
so.
think he would probably qualify as being kind of terrified at that moment.
If I were to bet, he'd probably peed his pants a little.
Yeah. So when we get back to the close to the corn, and again, this is the reason we even call this podcast "Close to the Corn." It's the subjects that make us uncomfortable. I had an old pastor. That's where I even coined the phrase that you guys hear me say is those things that are called close to the corn. We called it plowing close to the corn. That way, we knew it was going to get uncomfortable. It could tip you over. But the cool thing about it is when you plow close to the corn, yeah, it gets uncomfortable. But when it's done right, the yield of it, the product thereof, is better fruit, better corn, better growth, because it's able to take up those nutrients and everything so much better. And so, I guess my question is then, is how much discomfort are you willing to deal with before you back down now? Because right now, a lot of times we want to be what's comfortable. I've got to do something today that is completely out of my comfort zone, so I really, man, it's insane to me to think that we get so comfortable in life that when we get the least little bit of discomfort, we get back to going to our own way. But we see these guys, they're like, they stood firm from start to finish. From the moment the decree was made for them to worship Nebuchadnezzar, to the point that they're thrown in the furnace, to the point that they come out of the furnace and they don't even smell like smoke, they stood firm on their faith. So in other words, from the best of times to the worst of times, they never wavered. How many times have you wavered?
quite a bit.
More than I can count.
Yeah.
And so, I guess that's what I want to get to the brass tacks of it, so to speak, is what's your comfort level before you're willing to waver? Nobody's going to take that one on you. I don't know. But I mean, I guess it's a legitimate question. How much discomfort are you willing to deal with before you decide to say, no, I'm going back to my comfort zone? How much discomfort are you willing to deal with before you go back and get on the couch? Watch a little football, play video games, whatever the case may be. It's not worth it, I'm out. What do you think? Compared to, I would like to know what that is for any one of y'all now compared to, say, even a year ago.
Going just like a year in comparison.
Yeah.
My growth has skyrocketed in how much more I'm willing to make my voice heard, and obviously tell about the gospel. It's just a year ago I never would have thought I would become anything like this. Wasn't even involved in the youth a year ago.
Yeah,
so it's just,
I can take up for Cooper is, like, for those of you who don't know, Cooper's my cousin. I've known him my entire life, but, like, just in this past year, like, he's shown, like, exponential growth. Like, he's...
In the last summer.
Over the
honestly,
summer.
mainly the summer.
From
Like-
impact to now, he went.
Like, when did you start,
0
like,
to
attending
100.
youth? Like, in the spring, like, late spring?
Like
Yeah.
February.
Yeah, it was February.
And then, like, ever since then, like, he's just been, like,
0
on
to
fire.
100.
Like, it's been insane. It's been
Yeah.
crazy to see and witness.
So what about you guys? I know Cooper's journey. I've got to be a huge part of Cooper's journey. I've got to be a big part of your journey, even all the way back to our old church. And so I've seen you. You've been a steady growth guy.
Mhm.
Like I can commend you for that. You've had your hiccups, absolutely, but I've always seen you kind of really stand on your faith. And so it's been just something that I've noticed in through your life. But like these guys, I don't know quite as well. Probably, and Eli's probably he's the one guy here that I know probably the least. And I know quite a bit of your story just in conversation and being part of it. So I want to pick on Eli for a minute. So what would be yours? What would your from a year ago to now? What would be your level of comfort that you're willing to deal with before you crash?
A year ago, I never caught myself talking about God, but I don't know. I'd say when did I start coming? Week after church camp.
Yeah, probably midsummer.
Yeah.
You were midsummer.
I don't know. I started growing, like feeling a relationship probably about then, and then I don't know. When school started, I kind of caught myself just telling people about God.
Yeah, it's almost it became natural
like,
to you.
Yeah, like it just happened.
Weird
Yeah.
how that works.
Yeah.
It is really cool, isn't it? It's like you think about it. That's how Shadrack, Meshach, and Abednego got to the point that they were. It wasn't. They didn't come out the womb being like, "Praise Jesus," but they were taught it. They were engaged in it. And then when the challenges come up, because of how engaged they were with their relationship with God, they were able to stand. So you guys hit a little bit on this morning, and by the time this airs, it might not be what we had talked about that morning. But we hit on our armor, the armor of God, and so I really think about those battles and getting comfortable. Armor is uncomfortable, isn't it?
Very.
Yeah.
In and of itself, it's uncomfortable. So to dive into God's Word, to dive into your prayer life, to talk about your salvation, talk about righteousness, talk about the gospel and being prepared to present the gospel to people. I think about all of that, and then just truth. Truth is uncomfortable. But we listen to a lot of other podcasts around here, and I think it's, is it Shapiro that says facts don't care about your feelings?
It is.
That I think it's really cool that it's one of those things that we have to stand on is facts and truth. Well, the truth comes from here. facts are concrete. And so the fact of the matter is, if we don't stand on this truth, your generation and the generations to follow are going to fall farther away from the Lord.
As they are right now, though.
They are. But who has that impact, Wesley?
We do.
Absolutely. It's on us. You guys inviting people to church so they can hear me talk about the gospel, to hear Cooper, to hear Micah, to hear Wesley, whoever's up on that stage presenting a lesson or presenting a message in the music, or Isaiah in the church. We just need to make sure that we are having truth spoken, not just here, but once you guys are out and about, you need to be doing it then as well.
I think that's an excellent way to end off this episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Close to the Corn podcast as we explore our place in this world. This has been episode 1.